I'm Jon Altschuler.
I'm Scott Bennett. We've known each other for almost 50 years.
We grew up together on the playground.
And now we're in the foreground and still growing up.
From the playground to the foreground.
Join the conversation. All right, here we are. I'm Scott Bennett, and this is Jon Altschuler, episode 3.
Right. Doing good.
How's the week been?
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I hate to get started on this note, Jon, but I have a little bone to pick with you. Not sure if you see it coming, but we had a conversation. We talk intermittently, check in about various things. And I think you called me on the way home from the hospital. Is that right? Last week?
That's correct.
Your daughter had back surgery.
She had John Helton surgery.
What's that? What's the actual surgery she had?
Scoliosis.
Scoliosis. So she had a rod put in her back.
Correct.
Now, first of all, how's she doing? Most importantly.
She's an inch and a half taller. She's doing great.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Good. So we're glad that she's taller. I think it might have been nice to know. I mean, I feel like
what would you have done had you known?
I'm glad you asked because I figured you might. You know, I might have prepared a meal for your family. I would have offered something for your daughter that maybe her father wouldn't have done. I would have brought her some sort of stuffed animal in the hospital to provide comfort. But I just thought it was strange you didn't tell me. I mean, did you tell?
Have I ever told you?
Well, that's true. You haven't told me in previous surgeries of your family.
Right.
But we're speaking a lot more. And I just feel like, well, going forward, I hope that you will tell me. But she's doing great.
She's doing great. And I probably won't tell you.
Did you tell anybody?
Well, I did. Like occasionally I would. And I realized that what I was doing was there was no way to tell that to people where they didn't respond with negative energy. And so I don't like being around negative energy. So I chose not to tell people.
What do you mean by negative energy?
It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. It is kind of like the response is never like
right.
You bring down telling someone that someone close is going through a major back surgery
right.
And they're a child. And the reality is there's no one who I could tell this to who also could do something.
Yeah, I get that.
For that reason, I didn't tell people.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I know, and I'm glad she's doing better. And I think you were impressed by the hospital. We talked a little bit about the hospital experience.
Excellent.
Shout out to Scottish Rite, right?
Yes.
We're lucky to live in Dallas. I think we talk about that a lot in our podcast. Some of the best hospitals, and certainly Scottish Rite is renowned for so many things. So,
my wife pointed out every time someone came in to treat Evelyn, they asked where we came from. And we're like, we came from Dallas.
Yeah.
So yeah. People are coming all over to have treatment.
I had similar experience with the transplant at UT Southwestern. People travel in. We're really fortunate. So, you know,
but I'm sorry to not tell you. If it upsets you.
I appreciate that. And I'm glad, mostly I am glad she's doing well. It's always, we know that we're only as happy as our least healthy or happy child. So hopefully all is somewhat status quo back in the house. I mean, there's a lot of good.
We're good.
Good. Well, give her my best.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll call her and bring her that gift.
She'll be watching.
She's probably going to call and ask me, remember you said you were going to bring me something?
That's right. She wants
I'm going to be
doll.
picking her up. Yeah. A doll or some sort of lunch or something. I just got back from Colorado yesterday. And I got to tell you, obviously great to get away for a few days. Went to Red Rocks, which was really awesome. Saw a band and Lee and I enjoyed that. But something I wanted to share with you because I thought it was interesting is I've sort of done a sociology experiment over the last several days through Uber drivers, sort of chatting them up, having conversation about everything from politics to how they run their business, the efficiencies of Uber, commingled with technology. So, what's been your experience? Do you talk to Uber drivers?
I do. My experience is that I like to do Uber Black.
Yeah.
I don't like the lower level cars, honestly.
Not surprising.
Yeah. So I do Uber Black. I find it's more professional. I enjoy that better. And I find that the interactions are what you'd expect from like a chauffeur type service.
So I'm an Uber X guy.
Okay.
In fact,
I think that's less safe. It's my opinion.
Well,
it's not just I'm trying to be like a hoity-toity. It's also because I think that's just not quite as good of a driver.
You're not wrong, by the way.
Okay.
I had the scariest ride that we've ever had. Lee and I, we were at risk. No, we pulled up in front of the hotel we were staying at, and the guy did I think in New Jersey, which is like the U-turn, the unexpected U-turn in the middle of the street, and oncoming traffic was going to hit Lee, and the front door staff, the bell people at the hotel, as we were greeted with our suitcases, said, we saw that. How was the rest of the ride? It was very scary.
Wow.
But one thing I want to tell you is it's been interesting to hear their thoughts about the political state, the economy. I think it's really something people should do because it's a real gauge. I mean, depending on, is it a driver that's lived in the United States, born and raised? Is it somebody that's moved here to be a professional driver? I had a guy the other day, it was super interesting. His wife is a traveling nurse. So he rents his Uber, cost of, operating. There's a partnership there. And then he travels city to city as an Uber driver, does amazing. And he told me how he works the system, how his car is constantly moving, the efficiencies of how Uber knows him.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really compelling. Something I hadn't thought about. I guess the thing I take away, and one other thing that I took away from Uber is I mentioned we went to Red Rocks and we took Uber because it's a distance away from the city, right? It was about a $40 Uber ride. So when the concert was over, it's interesting what happens. And it was like a lesson in business and sort of free enterprise. The Uber drivers can park at Red Rocks and they will try to avoid staying what we call on platform. For those of us that have, ever marketplace apps, they have a platform. They want you to stay there because the platform takes a bulk of the money and the drivers keep less. And that's really been an issue, I think, for Uber drivers. It was interesting at the end of the show how many of them were walking. There's a queuing area. They have you waiting for the Uber so they pull up for efficiencies from traffic's sake. How they would rather try to get you to use them to avoid the fees. Make sense?
Sure.
And they would wait, and it was a period of time, and they were circling by. And what struck me is all of a sudden we've created this trust in a brand, in Uber or Lyft or these rideshare services that 10 years ago with a taxi, I didn't know the driver. Didn't have any relationship. I was fine getting in with them. All of a sudden,
the driver was still regulated. That taxi driver was still regulated.
Yeah.
So you had the implicit assurance of the airport authority,
right?
That the person in that line with the taxi sign on top of his car was accredited,
and he had a medallion and those sorts of things. So it's interesting to me right now that Uber has created this. I was watching the phenomenon happen where these drivers are waiting because they were hoping to avoid the major surcharge, taxes, and fees that the platform is going to keep in the event that I would choose them, until such a time when they had to get in their car and then actually go through the line and succumb to the fees.
Same thing happens in international airports though, like where you'll come in out of the gate and you'll have your baggage and there's people trying to race you down to not go through the taxi line. And I'm to the point in my life where I'll pay extra for accreditation.
Yeah.
So
it was interesting. Lee and I talked a lot about it. I told her it was going to be a topic for me for a while. So I wanted to bring it up with you because I thought, wow, this whole experience of that and then the drivers and my conversation, you can learn a lot through that. If you, some people don't like to talk to them, but I feel like it's interesting to get, understand where they've come from. Yesterday I had a guy who's changing careers. So there's just all the banter that goes on with an Uber driver is pretty fascinating stuff.
I was in Atlanta a couple months ago with a buddy and we took an Uber, into downtown, and the Uber driver was telling us first of all, he's from Africa and he's moving to the western part of the Metroplex because he wants exposure to Texas. He's already bought real estate.
Yeah.
He's a real enterprising guy. And it was interesting to hear his reasons for why he wanted to be in Texas. So he'd never been here before.
But he chose this to come to, but he knew that his chosen profession. He's going to drive
Uber here.
Yeah, but that was his chosen profession, right? Yeah. So it's interesting, right? I that's some of the things I was asked to, but really fascinating. And it was a good few days, but obviously Uber really left a mark on me and the experience of that. And I'm excited about our guest. Looking forward to today's show and the conversation we're going to have.
So our guest is one of my great friends of the last 5 years. It's Jarrey Foster, the SMU basketball great, who's in the midst of career transition, moving back to Texas. And we're excited to have him here today.
Yeah, looking forward to that conversation and learning more about Jarrey.
Thank you.
You can find us on social media at Playground Foreground.
Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe.
All right, so Jarrey, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you. And I got to tell you, Jon said that you were an SMU basketball great. I'm a Dallas native. Child of Moody Madness. Do you know what that is?
Yep. Moody Madness, Moody Magic.
Moody Magic.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
He knows Moody Magic.
Moody Magic, Moody Madness.
March Madness.
Moody Madness is one game.
Right.
Okay.
So,
and Moody Magic is I'm not an SMU
That's
grad.
the R.
You guys have that on
You just said you were a Dallas guy, and I'm saying Moody Madness was Jack Sikma and the Mavericks.
Okay. Fair enough.
We brought them back off the court.
That's right. Okay. Well, my real question is this. he said SMU basketball great. So since you are one, before you and the history of the program, what you've learned, who would you say the greatest basketball players at SMU?
Oh, it's a long list. I would say now there's a lot that goes in from my time there. And before we even start SMU basketball great, that's a great thing to say in here, but the humble Jarrey would say there's a lot before me that have laid a foundation at SMU. But you can go on the likes of the players that I played with, Shake Milton, Sterling Brown, Shimmy Ojale, and just I can name my home team, Ben Moore, Ben Amelagu, but they laid the foundation.
Ray Van Beveren.
No, Nick Moore, Ray. Exactly.
That's what we're looking for.
Those are my core guys. Nick Moore really laid the foundation for me.
Greg Kinzer?
Greg Kinzer?
Yeah.
You said no. So Greg Kinzer, I've heard of his name, and that's what
the point guard
of where at SMU.
Yeah.
Did he play with me?
No.
But no, this is what I'm saying. More just like the more of the connection that I had to previous like years right before I came in. That's more of the relationships that I had with those players that really left the mark on SMU for me.
So who does in your estimation, obviously we're a bit older, who do you think the greatest SMU basketball player?
Man, I mean, I'd say that we don't have a program necessarily that's defined by a single player or two. But maybe John Koncak.
That's what I was
looking
for.
the Olympics.
Yeah.
I think the player that I really regret for the school and the city is missing out on Larry Johnson.
Yeah.
Our city would be a different city.
I've heard you speak about
he had
that.
not been kind of sent out to somewhere in West Texas. I think it was UNLV.
Yeah.
Right.
Too bad.
He was a local great. And I think I was, because that's what we could, see. He was at a certain time really touted. But anyway, I thought it was a fun thing to hear you say.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to really put a name or a niche on like Jon said, on the best, obviously, because I haven't seen a lot of players. I just heard a lot of stories. But what I was able to witness, just some of the great moments as a whole program and what we were able to feel as one. And Moody Magic, that is the one, that is what makes SMU basketball it. So
you were there for a really exciting time,
right,
in the basketball program.
Correct.
That was fun.
Well, I'm excited, Jon, and you know each other. We don't know each other yet, but I think we're going to build a friendship, and I'm excited about that. But today, I think, Jon, when he suggested you as a guest, and we talk about topics, things that we think are going to be interesting to discuss with our guests, and it was clear to me that there's a mentorship relationship between the two of you. And Jon and I both put a real value on that in our everyday lives. We mentor across a variety of different ways. I think we both really love that for various reasons.
For sure.
It's you get as much back out of mentorship as you give away.
Definitely a two-way street.
So a lot has changed for you, I guess, right? Basketball. So I'd love to hear sort of where that is now. I mean, it sounds like you're probably leaning into mentorship and what's next for you and what you're doing. So
right on. No, to keep it brief, it's played college basketball at SMU, went through a 4-year transition period where I had to get surgeries, went through COVID, kind of a slow period for me, but a very abundant period for me in learning about what I wanted to do. I stepped into oil and gas for a few years. Jon mentored me in the commercial real estate space. Got to take a fast track class that was very valuable for me. Now I even know the language and the words of commercial real estate, but got to do coaching, got to step into college coaching space. But through that time, I was also rehabbing and healing from my injuries. And last year I had an opportunity to go to training camp with the Portland Trailblazers Rip City Remix, the G League team, and made the roster, beat 5 people out in 13 days, and really just went against a lot of fear after having 4 ACL surgeries. So through that time, had a great, healthy season, had closure with what I did, met great people in Portland, great teammates, but I knew that moment wasn't going to last forever. That wasn't a space that I was going to be doing forever. I wasn't going to be a 10-year vet in the NBA with 4 ACLs. I wasn't going to make the maximum amount of money that I wanted to make in the NBA. It was more about longevity. Where was longevity going to be? And I had to make a firm decision about a month ago about, do I want to continue to fight this journey about proving myself in a game? Or am I ready to take on the responsibilities of stepping into life and taking on the duties of what it takes to be a man outside of sport? And that is what is more important to me right now, is developing those skills that it takes to be a high level man. And then I can transfer what I've learned in athletics and sport, what I learned in mentorship and development, and take that into my career. So that's the space I'm in right now, and having a few options about which direction I want to go. But the more conversations I have, the more days go by, and I continue to learn, do research, and kind of just fill it out, things become more apparent. So just trying to lay everything out. I'm finishing my master's program in interdisciplinary human studies and behaviors in sports psychology. So writing a lot, reading a lot, and just expanding my knowledge, not only in the game, but around behaviors, mentorship, connection, community, and seeing how I can blend that in with basketball.
Love to hear sort of from your perspective, your relationship with Jon. What do you think about the mentorship to this point? How has that come to be?
Right on. No, I would definitely start with how much mentorship has played a role in my life, within the game, within the sport, outside the sport. But Jon came in at a very interesting time. Met him actually on the court, just briefly and initially through layup lines and just creating a connection there. But once I got out of school and kind of was on the transition phase, through injuries, we honestly just linked up on Instagram, and we both followed each other. I say it simply: we followed each other, we respected each other, and we found time to connect. And it's really that simple. And from that point on, we just stayed consistent with conversation. Been able to go be a part of different groups that we've created and just embraced and put ourselves in front of. But I think it's been more of just a one-on-one connection, but he's allowed his network to be my network, which helps me and gives me the confidence in the mentorship to know that I'm not alone. We're not alone. It's a broad aspect to this whole deal.
So Jon, obviously, it's awesome that you and Jarrey have built this relationship, but from your perspective, at the time and sort of now, what are you finding valuable in the relationship? What do you see that you're providing for him? As a result of your experience, I'd love to hear more about that from you.
Sure. So the way I really recall our friendship starting was after George Floyd.
Right on.
And you'll recall, like with a lot of white friends,
the
response from the white community to that instance initially was just like really kind of unusual to me. I was just like, man, I think we're not quite understanding the essence of what's happened.
Right.
And what I realized in my analysis of me, my white friends, my white family, was that we weren't really talking to Black people. We were talking about Black people, but we weren't talking with Black people. And so Jarrey and I did a 28-minute Instagram live.
Yes,
I watched that. I watched that.
That it's funny. A lot of my friends watched it, and people I didn't even know watched it. I've become dear friends with a family in Paris who watched it.
Yep.
So that's how our friendship started.
Right.
And so then from there, we formed a multiracial forum that was 9 people in the city. We met every week on Zoom for an hour and just talked about whatever we felt like. And we had, Vipin Nambiar, Mayor Miller, Bruce Ware, Anika Kale, lots of high-powered people in this group. And I thought that some of the things I was learning that were so important to me were things that Jarrey was teaching us. And so from there, I really admired his wisdom. And then COVID was lessening. We were able to spend more time actually interacting, and we go on walks and whatever, have meals. But just over time, we've become really good friends and understand each other. And I understand his drive. He understands my drive. And we've just tried to help each other. I think to your point, I've done a good job with you of sharing my friends, which I think is an easy thing to do and an important thing to do. But it's a concept I really drilled into my mind, is that if I just share my friends, that's one way I kind of help everybody move forward. So Jarrey's taught me all those things.
Yep. And like it's a very too much way street. And I appreciate that, Jon. I think that is what mentorship is a two-way street where we both can learn and give at the same time. So to even hear that, I definitely felt it, but to hear it and just to know that what I was saying in that time, which was a very pivotal time for everybody, And just an interesting time for me and trying to navigate myself outside the game, navigate myself in life during COVID.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? During that time, but the mentorship aligned it, the groups aligned it and allowed me to express, learn and grow at the same time. So
we were arguing about, or the society, American society was arguing at the time about Confederate statues,
mhm.
Yes.
whether or not they should be removed.
Right.
And Jarrey had the brilliant point of like, why is anybody put up on a pedestal?
Yep.
To connect with today's guest, Jarrey Foster, you can follow him on Instagram at Jarrey Foster. And to learn more about 10 basketball, you can check out his website, 10bb.com. Curious with the end of your career, like how it goes. Like, do you tell Portland I'm leaving, or does Portland say, hey, good run and you're done?
No, I was on a 1-year contract with the Rip City Remix. And after the season, I created such a great relationship up there. Obviously, there could have been conversations about doing another deal next year, but nothing was solidified about coming back to Portland. But I did have to reach out and let the organization know that I'll be retiring and that I'll be letting go of the game. And I was kind of surprised about how they reacted. You know, they made a whole post for me, did a tribute video for me.
Wow.
So that gave me the impression that I made a lasting impression on people, on an organization, a first-year organization. And just feeling that love let me know that I had closure. I did what I was supposed to do for the game, and I went out the right way.
So I'm just curious. Here you are. You said about a month ago you made this decision, and it's a big decision. I can't imagine. I'm gone through my own transition, and I think mentorship happens at really lots of stages. It's not just a young man or a boy or a postgraduate. It can be peer to peer.
Correct.
It can be within a business. But as you think about mentorship, it sounds like not only are you getting some mentorship from Jon, but obviously giving some from what Jon shared, but also it sounds like the work that you've done with others. You're a mentor.
Correct.
What do you think are the most important qualities of a great mentor? I mean, what do you look for or to be? I'm curious.
Correct. No, I think it's a simple answer of awareness of who you are when you're in certain spaces and environments. There's been spaces, I do camps, clinics for communities. I partner with communities in West Dallas and starting in East Houston, where pretty much go in and kind of compile a group of kids that really need not only advice in basketball. Basketball is just the platform that I'm able to speak about the basis of life. But within mentorship, like you said, it can be peer to peer. It can be in a business standpoint. But for the most part, being that source or that resource. So the relationship that I had with Jon, or being in the multiracial group, I was able to be the source to take in the information or to give information. But through that mentorship in the racial group, or even with Jon specifically, now I can be a resource to somebody else. So being a source first and then being a resource to somebody else is kind of how I see it. I see it as a funnel. So I've put myself in a position to come out of the situation that I grew up in. And I know that there are other kids and other individuals that are just like me, that grew up just like me, but don't have maybe the information, the drive, or the mentorship that I have from my coaches to get me to a position where I can be another resource. So I take it with a grain of salt. I try to do and help as much as possible, but sometimes it just happens. I didn't even know how I manifested doing a camp, and for it to be successful, it just happens when that's who you are. So naturally, I just want to kind of expand on that, scale on it, and see how I can touch many lives through the game of basketball.
You can find us on social media at Playground Foreground.
Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe.
One of the things, you mentioned sports, and as I was learning about you, the structure and discipline that it must take to be at the level that you're at.
Right.
I think in previous episodes, we've talked about my basketball prowess. I think if I ever shot 50%, which was close to what you did, I think, as I looked at your stats, it was because I hit one shot every other game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I only got one shot. Is what I'm trying to say.
Small.
Stan only let you play one quarter.
I got the
Everybody had to play a quarter.
Exactly.
He played second quarter.
It's true. I want one quarter. So that is true. But I'm just curious, in your peer group, people that maybe weren't athletes, and maybe in transition, whether they've been a few years away from school. I have two daughters. One is about to be 23 years old, just early in her career. Just curious, do you think that they're better prepared? Talk about preparedness for this transition and why mentorship matters.
Right on. No, I think there's an individual who was younger than me. He was a former teammate of mine, and really just like think highly of him. And he first, to speak about somebody that's been in my position that's transitioned correctly. And he wouldn't mind me saying his name because we were really, really close, but Everett Ray, played with him. He's younger than me, and he has transitioned into just the private equity space and just like really going into business. And I saw his structure of balancing going to business school and playing sports. So he played 4 years at SMU and also went to business school.
Is he from Austin?
He's from Dallas. Yeah. A little bit more closer to kind of Fort Worth, but in the urban area. But
and he got his MBA at SMU.
And
you're getting a second degree?
Yeah, my master's degree.
Everybody, I'm just telling you, everybody, I'm learning this from you because you've introduced me to a few other people. SMU is doing something right.
Right.
I'm a UT graduate and I love UT, but I feel like the other student athlete I recently spoke to, she has 3 degrees and still played sports, has built a very big NIL. It's amazing. So like, I think, well done, SMU.
No, they do a great job. And it's the schools within SMU that they create those great relationships with your professors, and the small class sizes, you're able to get more of a relationship, and those relationships go beyond the classroom where they keep up with you with after. So my mentors within the Simmons School have done a great job through my career after school, just staying in touch with me, and now have an opportunity to kind of finish my master's is a great place. So,
and one thing I always talk about, I think Jon does a lot with, is the alumni organization, right? You're pretty involved with SMU, various alumni. I'm trying to do more of that at the University of Texas. I was pretty involved in student life there. Talk to me about that. Like how important, because I tell my kids, like, we go to college, right? And for an athlete, you went to play and we're chasing a dream of playing professionally. A lot of other people go to college, they want to have a major. Sometimes you don't even know.
Exactly.
Most young men, I don't know why we declare a major at 18. I'm 52. I don't even know.
Right.
But like, here we are. And so talk about the importance of alumni. Like, are you finding that real value in that?
Yes,
I think there is.
No, it's just part of the connection to the university and creating and sharing those networks and friends. And you meet alumni, whether it's, 20 years plus before you or 5 years, where you're in that kind of that peer range, where they come back. And even classmates that I went to school with, that I created a relationship with in school, and I saw their behaviors on whether it was studying, you never really knew how to study. You just knew that you needed to get your work turned in and just find a way to get it done. But seeing how much they devoted to what they cared about showed what would happen 5 years later, and I picked up on that coming to SMU and seeing those classmates embody those behaviors, and now seeing the result of where they are now. That played an impact on me because I embodied those behaviors while playing sports. So it was a correlation between picking up those behaviors, playing sports, and trying to execute them. But seeing them execute them gave me the confidence to know that once I get the time and once I get into that stable place where sports is not the main thing for me, I can kind of follow that route. So I would say my classmates, the alumni base at SMU, just being able to have conversations, grow relationships, has all played a part for me in having those behaviors. But now I get a chance to actually express them and execute them.
One thing I've learned, I got involved with SMU when I was 32, like as an alum.
Yeah.
And the lesson I've taken from this is that it's the importance of paying the second tuition. So the first tuition's and you got a scholarship, so you didn't have to pay this. Right. But we were paying 4 years of books, classes, room and board. So that's your first tuition. Your second tuition comes later as a graduate, where you invest time, energy, and resources. And if to the extent you can do that effectively with the university, the university opens up even more doors to you where the university experience becomes even more enriching. I've found at 52 that I've never felt more dialed into SMU.
Right.
And like the benefits I get from my involvement are so profound that it's one of these things you kind of wish more people realized. But that's the beauty of the whole thing is you got to pay the second tuition. You got to reinvest.
Mm-hmm.
And if you will, because most people won't, the university just gives you all sorts of access. I'm going to do it at UT.
Yeah.
My daughter going down there. Yeah. I'm going to get big. I'm going to really get involved down there.
I hope to help you with that because I'm doing a lot, actually. Mm-hmm. I was really involved in fraternity council stuff, but also I was involved as a Texas Cowboy, which is the oldest student organization at the University of Texas, just recently come back on. So I'm serving a 3-year board term as an advisor on that. I agree with you. And obviously look, the last 437 days, I'm doing all these things in my life, things I wished. And so I love how you call it the second tuition.
Yep.
That is really, really smart. And I think a lesson for all that it's one thing to get the degree,
mm-hmm.
another thing, all the other things that come in your years post.
And I do also want to share real quick, like the aspect of mentorship, alumni, SMU, and blending that all together. I was able to be on a board at SMU, Mustang Club board with Jon for 3 years. And that experience was at first very uncomfortable, being the youngest, being a former athlete, being on the other side and just kind of listening and just trying to find your niche within the board. But at the same time, I found my role in just like listening and giving my experience and sharing my experience to help the overall mission. But without conversations with Jon, without conversations with other alumni and other people on the board, if I didn't pay that second tuition to spend time to be on the meetings, to get to those places, to get to those coffees and lunches, then it would all meant nothing. So it plays all a big role, but I can't just be a former standout player.
Yeah.
There's many of those. How are you going to be remembered?
Okay. So I understand what Jarrey just said. I think he's speaking to the importance to a young person of understanding the change in game speed. So if you think about sports, like when you go from being a junior high player to a high school player, mm-hmm. JV to varsity, varsity player to college to G League to pros.
Mm-hmm.
At every level, the game speed's changing in a pronounced way. And it's
right.
noticeable. And at first, when you get to that next level, you're probably intimidated. The game is moving a lot quicker. You're not certain how to function even.
Mm-hmm.
I try to convey this to people who I'm working with who are younger. That what you have to do immediately, as fast as you can, is understand the game speed has changed and everyone you want to be around moves faster. And if you're going to move slow, you're going to get run over. If you're not going to follow up quickly, people are going to move on to somebody else. It's just an important aspect of mentorship is that if someone's putting the time into you,
mm-hmm.
like nobody can sprinkle magic dust on you.
Right.
They can just give you some ideas. They can open up some doors. They can give you guidance. But I've found that when I've been mentored effectively, I feel like the person knew that, hey, I'm listening, I'm taking notes, and I'm
mm-hmm.
taking immediate action, and I'm getting after it. And I find that when you do that, people just pour back in more into you. And if you don't do that, they go figure out somebody else to work with, and they don't really
mm-hmm.
tell you why they're not talking to you anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny. Jon and I had a conversation, and which is why I say,
mm-hmm.
even one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast for all these years is the life lessons. I've throughout my time, I've gone to Jon, and there's always a bit of a brother relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly one that I treasure, or we wouldn't be spending this much time together. But it's funny. Like a week ago, he talked about high performers, top operators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about that.
High functioners.
High functioners, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and whatever you call that,
optimal
right?
performance.
Let's just call it functioning.
Yeah.
Functioning, right. Well, I say reaching maximum capacity, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of those things. As you think about you now, it must be so hard, but at the same time exciting,
mm-hmm.
right? For what's to come. But like, think about all the people that are where you are, because there are many people who are chasing that dream. What would you say to them? Like, how would you tell them? What advice would you give to them? Like, how do you make this transition? Where do they start even?
Where you are right now. It's about limiting that reaction time of even it's about limiting that reaction time. But the way you limit that reaction time is you have to take a step to go find the resources. You have to put yourself in the situation. You have to want to. You have to try. You have to give. You have to be open to adjust. And that is uncomfortable because when you go from playing a sport and doing one thing physically, and you think that's the way you reach high capacity optimism, that's how you reach your high functioning state. I can go in the weight room right now and put on music and go do a lift for 45 minutes, walk out and feel like I've done something.
Hey, so can we.
and that's true. That's true.
Dre,
He can bang some weights.
All right, if you can lift with me, I promise. Hey, you can come lift with me if you want to.
I think we're going to do
We'll
that.
lift with you.
Listen, we should definitely set up a workout for sure.
But Dre, make sure nobody else is in the gym to see it, and there's no cameras. I'm just being clear. It's going to bring me back to like 7th grade. John knows it's going to be tough. Like the first time I bench pressed, I didn't even know that the thing that you put the weights.
Oh yeah, to keep it
30 pounds.
Yeah, don't worry.
Like, this is easy. I thought it was easy. I didn't realize we could go down.
And that's the thing. It'd be over time, repetition makes it easy.
Yeah.
And
especially with 30 pounds.
Right. Yeah. 30 pounds is hard for me, y'all. No.
Well, so it's interesting you say that. And I think this word that that's really struck me, and I've shared it with John, specifically the last year, is intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you talk about have to. You kept saying, I have to do this. I have to do this.
Right.
I often use the word I get to as a result of my life and what's happened with the heart transplant. I get to do these things.
On.
Just a different mindset.
Correct.
But I want to talk about intentionality. What do you think of that word? I mean, how does that shape your life now?
It's a big part because it aligns with being present. And when you're present, you can be intentional about what's going on around you. And that awareness is not taught to athletes at an early age. In your early development phases, your pre-development, whether it's sport, life skills, and all those phases, you're not even aware that you get to.
Right.
So you're always in that mindset of I have to, or everything becomes a burden rather than it becoming something that can change your life or something that can come positive out of this. But that is where things could change in the industry. That's where things can change when it comes to mentorship and working with athletes in that space, is starting from a youth perspective and teaching this awareness of who you are and what you can do. But for the most part, just where I am and what intentionality has meant to me is waking up every day with a plan, waking up and knowing what I'm doing and not being idle. And when you have idle time, it's never good for you. But you can't work out to death. You know what I'm saying? So as a former athlete, you can't just keep finding ways to use your body to get positive reinforcement or validation. So it becomes, how do I optimize my brain? How do I turn on my brain? How do I transfer that structure, that discipline, those characteristics of a high performer into another space? And it's a tough thing to do if you've never been in, if you don't have the reps. So that's what mentorship did for me while I was going through that process. It gave me the reps before I even knew I needed it. So I was in an uncomfortable situation, but being intentional about showing up, being intentional about following up. I wasn't perfect all the time, but you have to go through trial and error so that you can see the consequences versus the rewards. So it's a balance.
What was your best at when you were playing? I know we talked about the levels. Let's be clear. You only stopped at high school. I mean, you played.
I was intramurals.
Intramurals. Well, okay, fine. I played intramurals, John.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
Not SMU intramurals.
They didn't. I know. Well, they had another time.
Yeah, I did not play very high.
But like, what do you think your best free throw percentage was? I'm just curious. Like if you had to guess.
I guess in the 80s.
What?
You think it was higher or lower?
You think you were shooting 80? You were 80% free throw shooter?
Yes.
Wow.
It was high.
So your career percentage was what?
I would say it was probably around 69, 70%.
I think I saw your last season you shot 75%.
Yeah, no, it was probably
no good.
No, it was not good. No, that's the
that's
thing.
No good.
And that was the one part of my game
we
that
didn't
was
know
not
each other back then.
Yeah, no, fact. Yeah, we did not do any lessons. No lessons
qualified as a top performer.
Exactly.
Let me be clear.
No, but the free throw line was one of my detriments, to my game, and I was aware of that. And it's just over time, each year it got better, but not to the maximum capacity.
How did it get better?
For me, it was more about being aware and being conscious at the free throw line. I do a lot of talking and a lot of speaking about just like calming down the space because there are a lot of distractions that will throw you off. So it was more of just trying to understand and trying to get comfortable at the free throw line first. And once I got comfortable at the free throw line, personally and not thinking that, you know what I'm saying, I'm going to miss, because that's all it was, is I might miss. And any moment you have that kind of negative thought and negative emotion throws everything off. So it's a snowball effect from that point.
What was the most distracting thing you saw in another arena?
Oh man. I definitely remember, I think this was in Vegas. We played Colorado my freshman year, and like just the signs in the background, but then they had like mascots. They were just like these multiple mascots, but they had nothing to do with the bowl, with the Buffs. So it was just like they were like dancing. Yeah, it was like a lobster and or like, you know, a banana or something like that. Right. So it's like it was never really like crowd noise. Right. It would just either be me locking in on something visually or me thinking. Most of my distraction was myself. So
just curious, never asked, you're only our second guest. Mm-hmm. What are you reading right now?
Right now, I am reading Transforming Basketball. Alex Rama was a coach up in Portland, Rip City Remix, and he studies CLA. It's basically constraint-led, articulations, and basically you're teaching the game in a different way. So you're basically finding ways to constrain the game, and you're basically developing from a place where if you're doing a 3-on-2, this is a simple version, like 3-on-2, and basically there's no out of bounds. So if the ball goes out of bounds, just keep playing. So basically you're either taking away the constraints of the game or you're adding constraints to kind of just change the perspective. So I'm learning a little bit more about behaviors, how we think about the game of basketball, and what we're putting into it and what we're getting out.
Do you know that book?
No,
I don't know that book. I read books on basketball. I love studying the game still.
Right on. Yeah. No, he just kind of just put it out. So just been in conversation with him, but we created a relationship, just the way he trained me up in Portland, and he dropped his book. I thought it would be a good way to do it while I'm in school right now.
So I'm just curious, as you're reading that book, how do you think what you're learning in the book is transferable to what you're experiencing currently in your life?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to learn a little bit from a different perspective, to teach me something. But at the same time, my life is transforming. So how can I help transform the game of basketball in my specific way? Obviously, having injuries and going through mentorship and using the pain, the education, the resources, and how can I use that, connect those dots and transform the game of basketball in my own specific way. So the book is specifically about behaviors, about how we think, and how we move, our intelligence, like fast twitch muscles, why we think so quickly, how we make quick split decisions, how our performance is, whether it's you had a good day, bad day, just all of those neurological spaces, cognitive spaces, just being learned about. But it allows me to step into the next phase of life, working with 1-0 and doing camps and mentoring kids through the game. But it also just helps me as a coach and as a developer.
Funny, I'm still reading The Places.
Oh my God.
After last week, I picked it up.
Fast.
I went back to it. It's funny. A few people reached out.
4 pages in?
No. I'm rereading it. I'm trying to pick up some of those deeper lessons in the book. Mm-hmm. I'm reading it differently. But honestly, I'm curious. Do you think that you talked about the basketball book and that your son is doing orchestra? Do you ever think about giving like a completely different book like that to him and let him apply that to what he's learning? Have you ever tried that as a fathering technique?
I gave him an acclaimed book on Mozart.
Well, that's in the,
and he had no interest in reading it.
Right. He didn't care. He didn't care. Interesting. Well, one other question that I have to ask, I love, just think about a lot is, here you are, you're a young man, such a bright future. It's been such a interesting conversation with you. And as you think 50 years into the future, what do you hope your legacy will be?
My legacy will be somebody that was stand up, that showed up for the people that he cared about, family. Just want to be a loving person, want to be a giving person. I want to create stability and create a new space for the Foster name. I understand my name holds weight in where I come from. But I want to add a new perspective to our family and let them know that success can happen. You can step into a new space. You can be different. You can have different relationships. But overall, it's for me, Jarrey Foster, I just want to be the man that I'm called to be. I reached my highest potential and I left everything to give. That's pretty much it. I'm not here to obtain. I'm not here to latch on to anything. I'm here to just be a resource and a source to lay a platform so that when I'm gone, you don't even have to know my name, but you will be able to feel what I left. You know what I'm saying? So I think it'll be done in the game of basketball. I think it'll be done in life. But overall, I want to reach my highest level, highest state as a human.
It's totally inspiring.
Yes,
I talk a lot about actionable legacies, and I got to tell you, Jon, thank you for introducing Jarrey today and inviting him. I think it really just incredible to know you. Excited to see what you do, and maybe in a few years we'll have you back
for sure.
Because I'm sure you'll have a lot to teach us then. So this has been awesome, and thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jon.
Thanks, Jarrey.
See you.